Hey, hey guys, welcome back to day 2 of week 3 of social studies. Last time we were talking, we left off talking about Mississippian mound builders. We're going to finish up talking about Mississippian mound builders and then talk about some of the customs that we'll see with these tribes. So, Mississippian mound builders were sometimes just called mound builders. They left off the Mississippian and just called them by more of what they were known for doing, which was building mounds. Many villages were built to surround these huge rectangular piles of dirt. And we've seen those rectangular piles of dirt because we have them right in our backyard at the Mounds Archaeological Park. Each mound was built using thousands of buckets of dirt. Buckets of dirt, not bulldozers, not huge, digging equipment, buckets. Buckets that you fill up with dirt, like you're going to the beach and making sandcastle buckets of dirt. Can you imagine how long it would take to build a mound that was sometimes 50 feet tall with buckets of dirt? That's crazy. So that kind of lets you know how hard this tribe worked. They were just hard workers. Some of the leaders were believed to have lived at the top of the mound. So I don't know if you remember, but the Mounds Archaeological Park, there was that house on top of that really tall mound. That would have been the leader's house. They would have lived on top of the highest mound, so they were kind of able to look over their village and be there as that guidance. Some of these mounds, at least one of them was a temple mound, which is kind of like the equivalent of church. They would go there if they needed to perform rituals. So if they want to do like a rain dance so that they could have crops growing, or if they had someone that was sick in their village and they were trying to perform a ritual to bring health, they would do those things on top of the mound as well. Then we've got woodland burial customs. Okay, so you see right here, this looks pretty familiar, right? We've got those mounds in our backyard. So burial, some tribes burned the bodies of their fallen warriors or the leaders, and then they covered them with dirt, making a small mound. So they didn't bury them, they just burned them and then covered them up with dirt. Other people from the tribe were burned when they died, and their bodies laid atop the warriors or the leaders' mound. A new layer of dirt was put on top of the burnt bodies. So they never really dug graves for them. They burned their bodies and then they covered them up with dirt, and then they would just repeat that process on top of one another. Archaeologists have found all sorts of useful items in these mounds. They found knives, pots, tools, and if you go to the Mounds Archaeological Park Museum, you can actually see some of those artifacts that they have found inside those mounds. Woodland Indians included these items because they thought those things might come in handy for the spirits of the dead in the afterlife. So very similar to how Egyptian rulers and leaders were buried with their treasures and their money and their prized possessions, the Woodland tribe also buried their people with tools and things like that that they thought they might need in the afterlife. All right, later tribes of the Southeast. This is going to be the last thing we talk about today, and then I will finish the rest tomorrow. European explorers found that there were other tribes in Alabama. The main tribes in Alabama were the Creek, Cherokee, Choctaw, and the Chickasaw. These tribes left very lasting impressions on our state, and many of the words that we use to describe places in Alabama actually come from those American Indian names. Our state name, Alabama, actually comes from the Choctaw name that means clearers of the thicket. So that's kind of neat. The American Indians also left us with a very deep respect for nature. They cared for the land, they cut down enough trees to be used, and then they killed enough animals as needed for shelter. So they cut down trees that they needed, only how much they needed to create the homes, and they only killed the animals they needed to survive. So they didn't just go out and clear fields and fields of land. They only cleared what they needed, and they only killed the animals that they needed as well. They figured that if they took care of their world, the world would take care of them. All righty, so there's some interesting things about Alabama. We will learn the rest tomorrow. See you then, guys.